Hello, and thank you for coming to a Tattered Cover virtual event. My name is Adam. I am the Director of Events with Tattered Cover. Tonight, we have a really exciting conversation we're going to have between two amazing YA authors. But before I get going, I do want to thank you. Tattered Cover has been around for 50 years. It's thanks to readers like you and authors tonight who have let us be around for half a century. So thank you for supporting independent bookstores. It means a lot. If you need or want closed captioning, there's a black bar at the bottom of your YouTube screen. Just click CC and that will get you closed captioning. For more virtual events and in person, if you're actually here in Denver, please go to tatteredcover.com/event. We have some in person, mostly virtual. You can find more coming up like tonight. Tonight, we do have an amazing author. We have Jay Coles in conversation with Adam Silvera. Jay Coles is a graduate of Vincennes University and Ball State University. When he's not writing diverse books, he's advocating for them, teaching middle school students and composing for various music publishers. His debut novel, Tyler Johnson Was Here, was based on true events in his life and inspired by police brutality in America. He resides in Indianapolis, Indiana, and invites you to visit his website at jcoleswrites.com. In conversation is Adam Silvera, the #1 New York Times bestselling author of Infinity Reaper, Infinity Sun, They Both Die at the End, and so many more. He has a book coming out soon, and I know he's going to talk about it with Jay a little bit, I'm sure. All of his novels have received multiple starred reviews. He's all over the publishing industry. This is a juggernaut of authors tonight talking about Jay's latest book, and I'm going to welcome them. Jay and Adam, please join us virtually. There you are. Awesome. I want to hop off. Jay and Adam, thank you so much. Congratulations, Jay, on your new book.
Thank you, Adam.
I appreciate it.
Thanks, Tattered Cover. Hi, congratulations. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling really excited, but also really nervous. I'm someone who's like super insecure. So I have already been like looking at what people have been saying about my book. And I'm like, I know this is bad. This isn't my debut. So I already know, but I'm really excited for things we couldn't say to be out in the world.
Yeah, I mean, also that's like a very human, unfortunately, like human reaction, just a curiosity of like, okay, I've like busted my ass on this thing. What are people saying about it? Are they obsessed with it as I am? And so like, don't knock yourself like too hard for giving in to like those impulses. I was just thinking earlier today, I was like, do I look at reviews anymore? Like Here's to Us, like the What If It's Us sequel, like comes out in December, and I was like, oh yeah, people have arcs. I'm like, I've looked at Goodreads once. I used to check multiple times every day. And so you'll get to that point where you're gonna be like, man, I'm good. Like I feel rooted in how I feel about the book, and that's the only thing I can control. Before we move further, can you just let everyone know what Things We Couldn't Say is about before we just kind of like move deeper into our conversation?
Absolutely. Things We Couldn't Say. I'm obsessed with this cover. I love it.
I was about to say, yeah.
It is about a young Black boy named Gio, who lives actually in Indianapolis, which is where I'm from, which is a very red state, a very conservative state. He lives in a community where super under-resourced, but it really follows his journey of grieving the fact that his birth mom walked out on him and his preacher family when he was a little boy. Then one day she kind of pops back into his life with an explanation of why she left. And he has to make the decision, a really difficult decision, of whether or not her reasoning for leaving is significant enough for him to have like a relationship with her, or if he's just kind of completely done. Meanwhile, he's also seeing like his life kind of turn upside down as he falls in love with a boy on his basketball team. And yeah, you'll have to read the rest.
Yeah. Love it. Do you want to speak a little bit about the inspiration of the book? Like what came first for you? Was it like character? Was it concept? Like when did the idea come about? How long did it take for it to become a book? Like all that fun stuff. Like I love like, this is my like craft geekness where I just love seeing like, I don't know, how the pizza got made.
My favorite types of questions at these kinds of things are the craft questions. So great. So actually, Gio, the main character of Things We Couldn't Say, came to me probably at my lowest point in my life in the last like year and a half. So right as the pandemic started, I was under contract for another book, and my grandmother had passed away. And I just remember feeling like shit, like life sucks. I mean, everything is like, it feels like, you know, life's just kind of taking and taking and taking from me. And I was like having conversations with my like publisher and my agent about like me not being ready to like write a book, like me even having conversations about, I think I need to give up writing. I need to kind of like take some time away and kind of just collect myself before I'm able to even like sit at a computer and like write any words. But I remember just kind of like one day randomly, as I was just kind of like sitting, you know, in my office space, just kind of like being sad and grieving about all the things that like not only the pandemic has taken, but just life, you know, with the passing of my grandmother, who was the closest person in my life to me. And felt like, yeah, this character named Gio just kind of popped in my head, and like his voice was there. And I knew that there was something that like was different about it. There was something unique about his voice that like demanded for me to sit down and actually like write a story. And I'm such like a pantser the way that I write, that I just sat down and was like, you know, asking this character in my head, like, tell me about yourself, you know, tell me your story. And as I started like writing, I was like, oh crap, this guy is going through it. And I was also going through it. So it was like really therapeutic for me to like sit down and actually like pants his story.
I'm so impressed with people who pants in general. Like, I mean, I am I outline, like I used to, when was the one time I like kind of pants? And for those who aren't familiar with what we're talking about, it's like those who you know, just kind of like just write, and they kind of free write and they see like what happens, like that's pantsing. And then there's like the plotters who of course are like working off of outlines or just a bunch of notes for themselves. And I definitely fall into the outline category. Like More Happy Than Not is the only book of mine where I was like, while writing chapter 1, I then outlined 2 and 3, but I wasn't doing the whole book. Like I was only doing like a couple chapters at a time from wherever I was at, you know? So I didn't know, I knew kind of the ending that I was like working toward, but I didn't fully understand how I was going to get there. And so like for you to just like be able to just drop every single emotion and slam that onto the page, like, and produce a book, I'm in awe of that. Like that would save me so much more time than just like sitting around outlining for like months or sometimes even like a year.
No, that's very fascinating, because I even feel like, I mean, the times I've tried to sit down and actually outline, because I mean, my agent really appreciates when I do that. Lauren, if you're in there in this audience, I love you, but I'm not an outliner at all. I just feel like incredibly stressed. And I don't know what it is about like sitting down. Maybe it's just like the sitting down and like staying still long enough to be able to like piece together plot point A, plot point B, and like trying to make it work. There's something beautiful to me about like knowing my characters intimately first and then letting them kind of take me on this journey. That way I'm able to be surprised with all the twists and turns of the story too. I feel like there's something about that that's like really interesting.
Yeah, and you stay closer with them because like you're not anticipating what's about to happen. Like you are just like feeling it. You're feeling that twist when that twist hits, you know? And you know, there's something about like, I mean, look, also I outline, it's not always a successful draft either. Like there's times I have like done like major outlines and have pretty much still rewritten more than 75% of the book. And because like, no matter how much you outline, if you are especially like a character driven writer, which I think is safe to say for both of us, like, you can't really plan those emotional beats. Like if you try to dictate like, oh, and here's where Jay's gonna get mad, you know, it's like, oh, but is that anger earned? Like, have we actually like gotten to the point to fully understand, like maybe Jay's actually gonna be sad, or maybe Jay's gonna be relieved about this event. Like you're not gonna know these things until you were like actually like in the text and like building those blocks. So well, so this is your second novel, and we all know that every debut novelist gets warned that the second novel is the worst. And so I mean, obviously this was also, you're already going through like so much. Did the fact that you were able to just kind of like get everything onto the page? Did you find that created at least like a little bit of like a smoother transition for you with like getting the next book out? How did being a debut novelist kind of like impact that? Like, was it at all reshaping the way that you were writing this book based on what people loved or didn't like about Tyler Johnson? And, you know, because there's always lovers and haters. So yeah, like how did that experience kind of like roll out for you?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned this earlier, like me being someone who like is incredibly insecure and I care a lot about what people think and say about me. I feel like as a debut author back in 2018, when my first book came out, me being like incredibly aware of like all the things that people were saying about my debut on Goodreads and on social media and on Amazon and like all these other outlets, and seeing comments from people who are like comparing my book to like other books with similar themes, and me feeling like, oh gosh, like I guess I'm
Right.
good enough, or like I'm not on that person's level or this other author's level yet. And so I felt like I had some like external voices that I had to kind of like fight against as I even thought about writing another book. Like before I even like was able to sit down to pen like Geo's story, I was having to like fight those kind of like demons in my head that were like, you're not good enough. Like the lies that I was like kind of making myself believe that people were essentially implying like online. And I felt like once I got to a place where I was able to kind of like weed all of those kind of like lies and like insecurities away a little bit, I was able to kind of like have I guess a clean slate to start with. And I felt like once I got to that point, it felt easier for me to like meet a deadline and, you know, like even talk
Ugh.
about like a book, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that's impressive. I mean, God, I know that feeling so much of the like, oh, well, it's not X, Y, or Z. And it's like, you know, I got that a lot with like Infinity Sun, where
Mhm.
people were like, oh, well, it's not like Carry On by Rainbow Rowell. I'm like, it's not supposed to be that. Like, I'm not trying to write Carry
Yeah.
On. Rainbow Rowell wrote that book. I had no interest in telling that story myself, you know? But it, you know, people just see one or two details about the book,
Right.
and they just, oh, it reminds me of this, you know? Like, I mean, think of it like how it would be so easy for people to not read More Happy Than Not because it reminds them of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, right? Which is like not even a film I had ever seen or heard of when I first had the idea for that book. And yet, like, they are completely different stories, you know? So imagine like someone watching that movie and then thinking like, oh, I don't have to read this book. It's like, cool, you now like missed out on like a completely different tale because you thought it was this. And it's just, you know, this is something that has always been so frustrating about our industry as well, where we see, you know, this happens with marginalized like stories and writers where it's like, okay, like your story is compared to another story by another marginalized writer, and I already read that marginalized writer's story, so I don't have to read this one. It's like, yes, you do. In the
Yeah.
same way that you read 20 other beach romances by white women.
Yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
and you know, you didn't like stop reading those because it was by a different person, right? And it's
Right.
just so frustrating and stupid.
I,
So I'm sorry that you had to like go through that. And
yeah.
yeah,
I
it
think even like I mean, I think this time around I was very intentional with my like publisher of not like talking about my book, you know, in media and online as like this meets this, you know, because I feel like for my debut, like it was a lot of like All American Boys meets The Hate You Give, and like those
right.
are very, very widely celebrated like titles. Like, and I was
Yeah.
like, man, that's a high bar. And I feel like with every negative review that kind of came out, like I was like looking and filtering like my book through like, am I meeting this like bar that like I feel like has already been placed like for me?
Mhm.
And so I was very intentional for this time around to like even like just take away that bar completely and be like, no, like things we couldn't say is not going to be compared to anything, or at least like we're not going to like start comparing it to anything.
No, that's such a, and oh my God, that I'm so happy that you set that boundary for yourself, because like comp titles can be really, sorry, this like the sun is like trying to join the event. Comp titles can be really dangerous for a book sometimes because they really do set an expectation. And it's not that your book didn't meet those expectations. It's just that you know, the only thing that your book didn't do is that it wasn't that book or it wasn't that book. It says nothing about like the quality of your story itself. It's just that people go into thinking like, especially essentially like expecting a copycat. And it's like not that. Like your book is, you know, if anyone's read it, is like very distinctly different from the comp titles. So it's just, yeah, you know, it's really tricky to find a way to like market a book sometimes. And I'm really just like, use the story that you have and you have your hook. Like, I mean, as you're talking about, I'm like even more excited to get the chance to like read more. Cause I need to like, I've already like met a little bit. I've met, is it David, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and we'll talk about David. But like, so I got to like meet David a little bit. And I'm just like, God, and like I want to like dig deeper into all that. But okay, cool. Well, since we just chatted about some of the like shittier parts of like publishing, I want to know like if you had a favorite scene that you wrote in this book, and if it's like too spoilery, if you want to make it vague, or if you just want to like give us a hint on like when to look out for it. But like, what scene just brought you like just total joy to write?
Yeah, I feel like most of the scenes where David is actually present were some of the fun scenes for me to write. I mean, I wanted to write a scene that felt like kind of like a meet cute without being a full-on meet cute. And I feel like maybe I did that with Gio and David. And probably my like, this might be a spoiler, but maybe not. My all-time favorite scene out of things we couldn't say would be when David just randomly shows up at Gio's house with like dessert. And he's kind of like, what the heck is this guy doing here? And that kind of causing like a lot of anxiety for him, because I can only like put myself in Gio's shoes and be like, man, like what is going on here? Like, I mean, he's really like come to terms with like his interest in guys. And so I felt like, man, I could just really relate to like his anxiety and like what was going on in his head. So it was really fun to write that.
So while we're on the note of David, I want to ask, especially because you said you love craft questions, so I'm gonna go geek out here. How did you come about with the idea of David? And then all secondly, did you ever consider making David like a narrator in the book? Like, did you ever have interest in doing like a dual narrator kind of approach for the story? So yeah, just first question, like how did David come to life?
Mm-hmm. I did. So in one of the very first drafts of Things We Couldn't Say, I considered and actually tried out like a few chapters of dual perspective with Gio and David, because that's like my dream. My dream is to do that. It's just really difficult for me, at least, to be able to like switch narrative voices and kind of nail that.
It's tricky for sure.
And so I'm still trying to like do a lot of research by reading more books that are in that vein, so that I can maybe attempt to do that in a more successful way in the future. But as someone who kind of just sat down and like pants the whole story, David just kind of showed up in the text, and I was like, oh, like the more that I kind of wrote, the more like surprised I was about David and like how interesting he is and how complex he is. Like the fact that he's a red haired guy who's driving a motorcycle, all these like random facts that like, oh, he's like someone that you'd want to hang out with.
Which also, by the way, that you were talking about it being a meet cute, I'm like, it is like a really fun meet cute. Like it is definitely like a one of a kind meet cute. So well done.
Thank you. Yeah.
But no, I'm telling you, like it's funny because I'm always just like, I mean, that's the testament to the character that you're writing, where it's like, oh, I want more from that character. And I think so much about how in the Infinity Cycle, again, like I have the shapeshifter character Ness, who I at one point like got rid of all his chapters because I was just like, am I getting anything out of this? Especially because it's tricky, right? When you have the character, especially in the same scenes as the other narrator, you have to really choose like who's narrating this chapter and why are you the narrator for this story, right, for this chapter, and that stuff gets really difficult. And it's like, well, maybe it's just I already have like two other guys in this, like 4 narrators. I was like, I have 2 guys, maybe I don't need 3 guys, and then I got rid of all of Nessa's chapters, and anything I needed, I made an Emil chapter out of it. And then I was like, I miss his voice a little bit. And 1 week before we were printing for ARCs. I wrote Ness back in with completely new chapters that were never there. I don't know how we pulled it off. Like I maybe had like a day to do edits on it. And then it was sent to the printers for ARCs, and everyone's like, those are my favorite chapters. And I'm like, those were literally first draft chapters that are now like printed in the book, right? But yeah, so like as I'm like reading David, I was like, oh, I see the fullness of this character already. So, and again, I'm still like early on in the book, so I'm pretty hyped to see where it goes. I love chatting craft with you. This is so exciting to me.
Yeah, me too.
Let's see. Okay. Okay. What was the most difficult scene to write for you? Just because we've had fun for 1 minute. And I'm Adam Silvera, and I have to like return to heartbreak because branding. But and if you don't want to talk about the heartbreak shit, we can move on. I can ask you something completely else.
Sure. I feel like a lot of the book was difficult to write. The fact that, again, like I was processing my own grief in my life as I was writing the book. I felt like there were several times where I had to step away and just completely do other shit. You know, like I had to go on a walk, or like go hang out with some friends, or, you know, video chat with family, play video games, you know, like whatever I could do to kind of like disengage. Because like, I mean, there's something, and I'm sure you can relate to this, Adam, in all of your books, but like when you're writing about grief, like it does something to you. And especially when you're like, the thing that you're writing can even still very personal and raw for you. And so I felt like the scenes where you see Gio actively grieving and how hard he's grieving, I felt like for me, those were just incredibly difficult. And there's one scene that happens at the very end with his mom that I didn't want to write, but as I kind of got to know Gio's story by just kind of sitting and just letting him take me on this journey, I knew the scene had to happen, but I was like really sad that it had to happen.
Yeah.
Without spoiling anything. So yeah, I would say that.
Yeah, I'm sure that especially all the grief moments are going to prove to be kind of like a little bit like a time capsule for you to, like, I'm sure even as you have reviewed the book through the multiple stages of after you've completed the book, and you're just like, here are past pages and here are copy edits. You're like, I don't want to read you ever again. Like, get out of my face. But yeah, I'm sure you're just like, it must be such a roller coaster for you to revisit, like because I mean, you just know, like, oh, this is me at my like raw state. Because like as I was saying before, like I like total admiration for how you're able to do that, because like I actually like can't write stuff when I'm that close to it. Like I wrote Histories Where You Left Me. I had the idea for it for about a year, but it wasn't until I was like, I recognized I was fully over my ex-boyfriend, that I was able to write this like big story about like grief and everything. And I'm just like, but I couldn't do it when like I was still holding on to love for him and still wanted to be with him. Like I had to like move past it. And that's been the case for, I think, like anything that I write where like grief is like a big factor that way. So yeah, I mean, it's just, I like love chatting with other writers about how they do it, because I'm just like, oh my God, like it's funny because we all have a book at the end of the day, right? Yeah. But we all got there in different through different paths. So so yeah, props to you.
Thanks.
Okay. Okay, so there are all these different kinds of love in the book, from family love to friend love to romantic love. How did you go about making the story feel so layered? Were you like intentional about like, okay, like I want this in the book, I want XYZ, or like was it just a matter of like while you were like pantsing and everything that you found this tale kind of like hitting all these marks?
It was very important for me, as I was writing Gio's story, to be intentional about like the love that he walks into and the love that he finds, you know, along the way in this journey.
Yeah.
Because it's interesting. I was actually talking about this with David Levithan about a month ago, about how there's something really important and really beautiful, but also really like tragic about like queer people in isolation in a lot of stories, and how that can be a really powerful thing, but also like a really like damaging thing at times, you know?
Yeah.
And I felt like I wanted that to be something that I talked about in Things We Couldn't Say, but I also wanted to like counter that with also like these different support networks that he's able to have, kind of like balance out, the kind of harder, darker parts of his life. And so, I mean, he has really solid friends who like support him no matter what, who love him and are loyal to him, who will do anything, for him and with him. He has a wonderful stepmother, who's like incredibly there and present for him, in the place of the birth mom that like abandoned him when he was a little boy. So having those like different kinds of support networks was really important for me to write that in there, especially, I mean, Gio was like a black boy, a black queer boy who is going through life with like already like people against him, right? And society against him. So like it was important for me to be intentional about having those avenues for him to be able to like feel supported and connected and loved and deeply known.
I love it. No, again, I'm just so excited to like read more. So speaking of Gio, we kind of like we shouted some love to the cover earlier. What was your reaction? Because you've had such beautiful covers so far. What was your reaction to getting this cover for Things We Couldn't Say?
Well, it was interesting. They, my publisher, they asked me, hey, what are some covers that are out there that you really enjoy? And I sent them some covers that I really liked at the time, and sent them some ideas of directions I would love for them to go in, and they completely disregarded everything that I sent them. But I'm so thankful that they did, because
Oh my God.
I end up with this, and when they send it to me, I like cried for like 10 minutes.
Wow.
I was like, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Like the little gold foil teardrops or raindrops, whatever you want to call them. I felt like really did present me with this like, black, queer, vulnerable boy, like on the cover where I rarely get to see that, where, any of us really get to see that in books, period, let alone YA. I felt really like honored to have that cover. And yeah, it really does mean to have it. So shout out to Bailey Crawford and all the members of the design team. Bravo.
No, it's special. I mean, that's why I was so curious for your reaction. Because I was just like, yeah, I know, like we don't see this very often. So yeah. Also, guys, just so you know, for those who are listening, we're going to start answering some of your questions soon. I'm going to ask a couple more. And then, so whatever you leave in the comments, I'm going to start seeing and I will ask on your behalf. So feel free to start thinking of some stuff that you want to ask Jade. Okay, so if you could get a character from each of your books to hang out, who would you choose? What would the dynamic be? Would it be friendly? Would it be combative? Would it be romantic? Who would you like want to see like hang out and have a moment?
Yeah. I got asked this question a couple days ago, and there's a really cute dog in Things We Couldn't Say named Biscuit. I would love to have a dog during this pandemic. I need something to like,
Yeah.
By the way, your dog, iconic.
I was gonna say he's also a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
He's not here right now for a reason, but yeah.
Sure. Yeah, but like I just feel like that dog's so cute and cuddly. And anyway, I don't know, make me really happy. But also seriously, I would love to hang out with Ollie, who is one of the best friends and Things We Couldn't Say. Ollie is a little bit annoying and can be problematic, but he's so like funny and wild. And I think like as someone who's like super introverted but kind of desires to have some sort of edge, I feel like Ollie would provide that for me. We just get a lot of chaotic, like, I don't know, shenanigans like all over the place. I feel like it'd be really fun.
It's so funny. I was just thinking, no, sorry, that's lie. I was just reading something about how someone was giving some kind of like prescriptive advice about writing, and it was like, well, if your character introverted, give them a super like outgoing like best friend or someone. I'm just like, oh, is that really how people are like writing their books? And then I'm like, I was like, is that actually doing something for anybody? I'm like, oh my God, yeah, like you literally just said that does something for you. And I'm thinking about some of the friends in my life where I'm like, yeah, shit. Like because I kind of walk the lines between like very social and like get out of my face. And I'm the very social person for some people, and then I have like the energetic ones who let me be kind of chill. And I'm like, there is something about the opposite attract thing that I don't think I was giving enough weight to until this moment right now. So, okay, wait. A couple questions came in. I'm gonna make sure they don't overlap. Okay, well, all right. So what's something that writing Geo for you and Emil for me taught you about yourself? It's a wonderful, beautiful question. Thank you, audience question person number one.
Number one. Adam, I would love for you to go first.
I will happily go first for you, even though I don't have an answer, because I need you to like,
Sure.
you know, it's your launch, so I'll take the hit. Something that writing Emil has like taught me about myself. So I, thank you, Alexander, for the question.
Thank you.
So I write about Emil's like body dysmorphia throughout the series, and a question I've gotten a lot is like, oh, is Emil going to have that resolved by the end of the series? And I'm like, no, like I'm 31 and still dealing with this. Like Emil is 18 years old, you know? So I actually like, I just appreciate the endurance from that. And like, and you know, I've like struggled a lot with like a lot of like suicidal thoughts and shit over the years or whatever. I'm sorry to unload that to people, but like but you know, and I'm lately just kind of like recognizing and appreciating how much of a survivor I am, and a lot of times where like I did not want to survive, especially after this last year. I mean, I adopted Taz like at one of the lowest moments of my life, and like that dog has like literally saved my life. I already have a tattoo plan for him that I might get in the near future. But yeah, but it you know, so I think writing Emil, especially because I was writing Infinity Reaper during the pandemic last year, I did a massive rewrite for it, and just I know I love his heart and his spirit, and there are a lot of moments where he has like low points where he's just kind of like, oh my god, like I just don't want to be doing this, and yet he continues to do the thing, and I think that that reflects where I was at. Yeah, he's just kind of taught me to be stronger. And even if he's not the traditional superhero type.
Yeah.
How about you and Gio?
That's such a beautiful answer, and mine isn't as eloquent, but
doesn't have to be.
Yeah, I will say I feel like I learned so much from Gio. I mean, I felt like there were a lot of things that Gio taught me as I wrote his story. And even as I reread his story, like I feel like there's even more that like he's showing me and revealing about myself. But one thing in particular is like just Gio's bravery, like, and how like his bravery isn't super like it's something that you can't really see on the surface all the time, but he's like quietly being brave, if that makes sense. And I feel like even in the way that like he actively has to like wrestle with like forgiveness and like, is it worth it to forgive this person when he feels like a lot of pressure from society and from like his, you know, preacher father, you know, who's like, the Bible says this, you know, you need to forgive this person. And he has this internal like conflict about, but I'm not ready. And that's a brave thing to admit. I feel like for me, as I was kind of writing that, I was like, yeah, like I need to hear that. I desperately need to hear that right now. As I like amidst the pandemic, as I was writing the story, I was also coming to terms with my own issues of like forgiveness and like the ways I need to forgive my parents and the ways they've wounded me as a kid. And I feel like this like fictional 17-year-old boy is like kind of my therapist in a way, you know. It was like really, really cool.
Yeah, I love when books are therapeutic outlets for us. So props to you and props to Gio. And also that was eloquent. So give yourself more credit. Let's see. Okay, audience question number 2. Do you have any hesitancy or difficulty writing honest sex scenes? Thoughts?
I do. I don't know if I have super strong thoughts about it. I just feel like it was really natural to write that scene. Like I felt like as Gio and David kept bonding, I felt like it felt like a natural transition in their intimacy with each other to like um take that next step for them, and also have like conversations about what it means for them.
Yeah.
Also I feel like, yeah, talking about sex is important in YA, period. Um, and I felt it was extra important if I was writing a book that also has like a layer or a theme of like spirituality and like religion, and how like those two things, like religious texts and sex, are usually like not in the same book,
Yeah.
or if it is, it's like this is wrong and you shouldn't do this. But meanwhile, like young people are still having sex, like it's still happening. And so I felt like it was really important for me to like talk about that in an honest way, but also like handling that with like a lot of care, because I didn't
Yeah.
want to mess that scene up like for the life of me. Like it was the one scene that I was like, I can't mess this up. Um, but I think it's important to have more of those.
Yeah, I'm happy we have this question, just especially for you to hear that pronouncement of like, oh no, this is like the one scene I had in mind that like I could not pick this up. So yeah, and I just think too that like it's so important, especially in queer literature and queer literature for youth, where like our books sometimes could be the safest introduction to queer sex for our readers. Otherwise, they turn to porn, which is like, yeah, go watch porn. I don't care, but like if porn's your only impression of what sex is, like it's really misleading. So I think as like queer creators, we're doing a service to a lot of readers with like what queer sex like can look like in another way. All right. I just lost the questions. There they go. Okay. Question number 3. Hi, Stacy. Is it easier to write? Oh, this is a great question I want to ask. Is it easier to write a character who is inspired by yourself, or someone you know, or an unfamiliar character?
Yeah, I'd love to hear your answer for that too, Adam. But I think I always go into writing like anything being like, this character is nothing like me. Like I'm completely making this person up. And then when I finish their story, I'm like, holy shit, like, oh wait, like this is me. Um, or like there's so much of me in this character that I can really resonate with. I mean, Geo, for instance, like in this book, shares my love of Paramore and basketball and growing up like spiritual. I'm even wearing my Paramore Riot shirt right
I
now.
love it.
And
Also,
so
orange is a great color on you, by the way. I meant to tell you
thank
that in the
you.
green rooms.
No, thank you. I never really wear orange, but I love it. So I feel like even every time I try to like write a character who I'm like, this person will not be like me at all, they end up just kind of naturally taking parts of who I am, even the side characters in some ways.
Yeah, and I feel often with the side characters, I try to give them something that's
Mhm.
either from me or from like someone close to my life, because it just helps me, flush them out a bit and give me something that I can like attach
Right.
onto. Because all that stuff comes in handy when it's whether it's dialogue or just actions and behaviors and everything. I think I have found that it's easier to write characters that are like pulling from like big essences of mine. But it gets a lot harder when you're on book 8
Mhm.
and you feel like, haven't I kind of already said everything about myself for the young adult audience, at least,
Yeah.
right? Like there are so many things that I've gone through in my 20s that like I think if I'm going to actually explore them, it's going to be an adult novel, right? But I'm like, oh shit, well, I'm contracted up to like book 10
Yeah.
right now. And so yeah, it like I'm writing a book right now where I haven't completely cracked the second narrator. And yeah, and something you had said earlier about like, you when you met David and Hanson, you're like, there's just something interesting there. Like I had a whole outline for this like second character
Yeah.
planned. And then this one random person that engages with one of the first narrator, I was like, I kept thinking about him for like weeks and
Yeah.
just like, shit, are you the other narrator?
Yeah, I love
And now I'm like going back and redoing the story, and I'm like, and I'm just trying to follow that thread because I'm like, there's something there. There's something that like is screaming to me, and I'm like, okay, well, what can I give him that I'm going to start getting connected to that person? And I'm like, giving him a lot of like the poverty shit that I dealt with growing up and everything. And I'm like, oh, and it's like, it's making so much more sense to me now. So I definitely find it easier to write a character that has like more attributes like myself. Okay, there's a couple of questions. I want to like knock them out. This one is from Mark. What music were you listening to while writing the book? So you've already mentioned Paramore.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, what else were you listening to?
I had Paramore like on constant loop as I was writing this book. Obviously, there's a lot of references to them and things we couldn't say. And I just talk about them a lot on my social media. So
I was gonna say, didn't you have like a Paramore interaction?
I did, yeah.
Is it Haley or
Haley Williams? Yeah, she like I started this like Twitter trend of I was like, hey, Paramore fans, like send me your top 5 Paramore songs of all time. And then people kept tagging Haley because it went viral. And they were like, Haley, you need to do this. And she actually responded with her top 5 songs. And then like all these articles came out about like my tweet. It was like insane. But
oh my God. You need to be refreshing that this week.
Yeah.
For your book that has 8,000 Paramore references.
For sure. But I was also listening to, so if you have Spotify, I just kind of typed in Spotify beautiful songs or whatever, and like there's a playlist that Spotify actually curated called the top 100 most beautiful songs in the world. I kind of played that on loop, and there's some like really, really chilling songs, some really sad songs, but some really, really beautiful music on there, and a lot of those songs make up a lot of the playlists that are in Things We Couldn't Say. Fun fact.
Yes, it's so whenever authors like, here's my playlist, I'm like, that is impressive that like you all have that, because I literally am just like, whatever I'm listening to is just kind of what I'm listening to. And my playlist for Infinity Reaper also would be so boring because I literally just listen to like nature sounds, because everything else felt so loud to me that I just needed to like calm down during the pandemic. So like every character had a different like element, you know, like I think Maribel, I would listen to like winds and like heavy air sounds, and Emil was like crackling fire. Brighton may have been like storms. And Ness was, God, what was Ness? No, I think I'm blanking. I'm sure if I look at my phone I would like see them. But it also helped me like get into the headspace. Like when I'm listening to like crackling fire, I knew that I was like writing Emil. So there was a little potential trick to try when you, as you continue your adventure into writing a multi-narrator novel. All right, the last audience question is from Lauren. Lauren loves the sibling relationship between Gio and Theo. How did you capture a sibling bond, that feels so genuine?
Yeah. You also do this, Adam, very well.
I try.
I love writing about brothers. I love writing about siblings. I mean, I wrote about brothers in Tyler Johnson Was Here, and I also wrote about brothers in Things We Couldn't Say. And it's mainly because I just really desired to have a brother that I was connected to. I do have a brother, but we are not close at all. Like we don't talk. So I think it's like for me having that desire of having like this brother figure who I'm able to just kind of like run to and like go through life with and be like each other's like best friend, you know? And so it's really like probably like a really deep desire that I have that I'm just kind of like getting fulfilled like on the page, you know?
Just
kind of
it's
writing.
like lovely, but also so sad. Like, I no, because I'm there too. Like, I mean, I have my brother. You know, like we like each other. He's 2 years older. But like, I wouldn't say we're close anymore. Like we talk to each other maybe during, you know, big life events in the family. You know, and like we maybe text each other on our birthdays, but we're not like having phone conversations. But I was supposed to be a twin, and I've like I find myself like Infinity Son, I find myself writing about twins. And more happy than not, there's a, you know, something that happens with like a pair of twins and Aaron's friend group. In this book I'm writing now, one of the narrators, the one that I outlined, he was supposed to be a twin. And now I'm like, I don't think that's going to work anymore. But it's just like, I constantly feel myself like being pulled toward that. So there is some interesting like magnetism that comes when you're just like, oh my God, writing about good dads. That is something I didn't know. So I like constantly am like, that's for me, I'm like, that's always a challenge for me. And like that, I always consider an exercise in my ability to like make a relationship feel real. Okay, last question for me. What is next from J. Cole's? Is it, are you doing more YA? Are you doing some middle grade? Are you gonna do adult? Are you gonna do comics? Are you gonna do video games? Are you gonna do Paramore fan fiction? What's up?
Yeah.
And if you can't talk about it, that's okay as well.
Yeah, a lot of things I can't talk about, but I am hard at work at my next young adult book that's been optioned. And I've already written my middle grade book, but I'm in the process of editing that. I had to do some significant edits to it because turns out when you're going from writing YA to writing middle grade, there's a lot of stuff that you just have to kind of like unlearn and like and I wasn't prepared, and so I just kind of like did it, and now I'm like kind of editing it. But I'm really excited about the things I'm working on right now. I'm getting to kind of play around with my love of music, and before I even like became an author, I was a composer, and so I wrote music for like bands and orchestras like across the globe. And so I'm getting to kind of like tap back into that world as I'm writing my middle grade or like editing my middle grade. So that's been really, really fun.
Yay. Well, now, excited.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I do have like something I want to like just share with you.
Oh my God, love it.
Yeah. Because I thought about telling you this in the green room before this event, but I was like, I'm going to bring this up with Adam and he's not going to remember this. So I read More Happy Than Not when I was actually a senior in high school.
Right.
And I stayed home purposely like from school just to like finish it. And I was like laying in bed, like finishing More Happy Than Not. I remember like bawling my eyes out by the end because I was like, man, this is the first like QPOC that I've like seen like, you know, on the page, and was like, man, like I really like love this story. I love the writing. I love Aaron like so much. And I'm not going to spoil it, even though it's been out for a long time. But I remember what I did was I ended up, this is so embarrassing. I ended up
Is this about the trailer?
A book trailer.
Yeah, I remember.
And I like emailed it to you and being like, hi, I know you don't know who I am, but I made this for you. And then I was like, I waited like, you waited like a week to like respond because you're just busy, of course. But I was like, oh, this guy is probably like some weird, like whatever. But then you responded, you were like, this is so great. Like, thanks for sending this to me. And I was like, that's so awesome. So thank you for being, my first like Y author crush. That's awesome.
Oh my God. That's so, also, I'm like, kind of, it's nice to hear that I responded because I have no like capacity to respond to anything anymore, and I haven't for years. And I say as much on my website as well because I feel so guilty, but I do read like most of the things that like come through. But yeah, no, I definitely, and like I remember a trailer, like I don't remember it like clearly, but but did you narrate it? I think.
Yeah, so I had like my friend do the voiceover.
Okay, that's
it was, we went all in, Adam.
But see, that's like, and I don't know, I love that so much. Yeah, I mean, because it's there's so many stories that you write and you just don't know how they're gonna land with people, and you can't control that, right? And someone's gonna make a trailer out of something, someone's gonna do fan art, someone's gonna get a tattoo, someone's just gonna like, there's someone who's gonna be your number one fan and you're never even going to know because like all because maybe they don't send you the email right sure. or they forward along the book trailer that they exactly. But thank you, that's like, that is it's so I don't know, I like it's been a funny career, and it's been really cool to see how many people, especially I mean between you and like Julian Winters, another who's like Mason Bieber, who told me like how More Happy Than Not especially is like help given them like more confidence to kind of like pursue their own publications. I'm just like, and it's so dope because like now someone else is reading J. Cole's and Julian Winters and Mason Devers, and they're just like, oh wait, shit, we can do this. And it's just like the domino effect that keeps going, right? So and of course, like I had authors who were that person for me as well. Like again, I didn't know that we could even write like queer characters in books until I read Cassandra Clare's City of Bones, you know. But anyway, well, thank you for all that you're doing. Thank you for inviting me to participate in this event. I need to make sure that I have your number, and I'll just DM you. But like, but yes, huge congratulations to you, and look forward to reading more and like get into this sex scene that you did not want to screw up. So,
yes. I would love to know your thoughts.
Yes. Enjoy the rest of your publication week. And yeah, I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Adam. I really appreciate you helping me and doing this with me.
Yes. And thank you, Tattered Cover, for hosting today. Please get Jay's book from the store. Please support the independent bookstores, especially Tattered Cover, for hosting this wonderful event. We had so much fun. And yeah, see you all around the internet.
Bye.